Hello, everyone, and welcome to Casual Experts Only. I'm Mike, and I'm joined as usual by Luke.
Hey.
And yeah, there was a lot of crazy DC news last week.
Hmm.
By the time this comes out, it'll be about like probably like almost a week. So yeah, it's been almost a
Yeah.
week since those announcements came out, and James Gunn waited till the last minute. He initially
Hmm.
said like mid or late January, but ended up waiting till the last day of January.
Literally,
So
yeah.
yeah, it's kind of funny. But yeah, so let's go into those. I think first off,
Right.
I found it interesting, but I was glad that he mentioned the projects that are already coming up this year, like
Yeah.
Shazam, Flash, Blue Beetle, and Aquaman.
Hmm.
And he definitely seems excited about all of them, which is cool.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been seeing a lot of chatter online where people were kind of not super interested in these new movies if they're not going to be part of a wider universe. Which,
Right.
first off, I feel is kind of dumb because what if, like, even if they're good movies, like, so what if they're not part of the bigger universe? Like, you're only going to watch
Exactly.
something as part of the universe. I feel like people have been kind of
Right.
spoiled by the MCU, but
Hmm.
um, but it does seem like he's addressed those, so I feel like he's not just going to pretend they don't exist until his stuff comes out.
Right.
It seems like he acknowledges their existence and thinks they're good. And he even said that the Flash reboots the DC universe. So I was kind of hoping he was
Hmm.
sort of going to springboard off the Flash to kind of explain things like how things are different.
Yeah.
Um, so I kind of hope he does that. And considering he did mention that, it kind of seems like that might be the direction he's going. But what makes that kind of confusing is Blue Beetle and Aquaman both come out after the Flash.
Hmm.
So are they just supposed to take place before the Flash? And the Flash is like, the reboot. But then we also have like some other stuff like the Waller show after. So it's like where's the like
Right.
line in the sand where we see like the reboot of the DC universe, you know?
Yeah, I think for continuity, I think that everything after the Flash will just take place after the Flash because
Hmm.
I couldn't imagine for the casual audience that would be kind of confusing. Like the Flash came out, changes everything, but these other
Yeah.
movies they have before it. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, there
No,
might be like
yeah, that's true.
I don't know. I mean, it could. I don't know.
I mean, he also there we will talk about this towards the end of this episode, but he has said that he is open to having some of the DC actors reprise their roles. So it doesn't
Yeah.
seem like he's totally rebooting everything necessarily. It's not like
Right.
not every role. So that's kind of
Hmm.
confusing, you know? Like I kind of feel like if that's true and it's some weird amalgamation of a hard reboot and a soft reboot,
Hmm.
like what's going on there? I really hope that it's not confusing. But
Right.
I guess we'll see. But yeah, so
Yeah.
we got those four movies coming out, and I guess it's not necessarily like they're totally going to be erased. It's just sort of like going to be rebooting things with the Flash.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's that. But then we have the actual projects that are coming up. And first off, I kind of want to address the name of the first chapter. It's called Gods and Monsters,
Hmm.
which I find kind of interesting. I'm probably like overanalyzing this, but I think a big difference, and I've heard other people say this as well. The big difference between Marvel and DC is like Marvel is kind of very like human centered. Like the main characters are very like just humans that like have like
Hmm.
powers or
Yeah.
something. But besides maybe Thor and like a few other godlike characters, but with DC, a lot of them are like gods or like godlike beings that are trying
Hmm.
to be more human.
Yeah.
And then we have Batman, who's like the most human out of all of them, but is like the least human at the same time,
Yeah.
And I
Right.
kind of find DC more interesting because of that.
Yeah.
I find them just all the characters a lot more interesting. I find the like gods that are trying to be more human a lot more interesting than just, a bunch of super soldiers. No, which is
Hmm.
definitely a bit reductionist of Marvel, but still.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I definitely understand that.
but so I kind of feel like that's where they're going with this, like gods and monsters. Like there are a few projects that have actual monsters in it, so that's obvious.
Hmm.
But the
Hmm.
whole gods thing, I'm assuming, is mentioning, is referring to Superman and Wonder Woman and maybe even like Green Lantern.
Yeah.
But Yeah, you want to just hop right into the first project, which is an animated project. I think this is
Yeah,
that Creature Commandos.
Creature Commandos. Yeah, and what I thought was interesting was I'm kind of taking a step back real quick. Is that
Oh yeah.
even like the bigger superheroes that were mentioned, there's a Superman, there's a Wonder Woman, there's a Batman, but
Hmm.
like all of those projects are specifically designed to introduce other characters.
Hmm.
And so like there are projects that are completely new characters, but there are projects where the characters we already know, but they're sort of geared more towards introducing some of the other characters, which I thought was really kind of like the best way to go about this instead of just
Yes.
starting right out the gate with like a Justice League and all the main heavy hitters. You do have some of those characters, but they're
Hmm.
more geared towards introducing characters that the audience is not necessarily familiar with.
Yeah, I feel like it would be a bit boring to have like 5 to 10 years of just setting up, like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, kind of
Right.
thing. I am glad that they are introducing other characters, so it's kind of expanding the universe, without
Hmm.
making us wait super long.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess Creature Commandos. What do you like think about this? Because I've like I really have no like idea really what they are. Like I kind of know what they are. Like they're supposed to be like a World War II team originally, but I don't really have
Yeah.
much interest in it, I guess.
Hmm. From what I understand, and it's literally been a day since the announcement, we're recording
Yeah.
this the day
Right,
after.
yeah.
From what I've heard, it's kind of like what the Dark Universe was trying to be. Like there's all these monsters that are
Mm-hmm.
like a crime fighting team. Like you have Frankenstein, the Bride of Frankenstein. I don't remember any of the other characters, but there's sort of like different like classic monster
Hmm.
archetypes are in this group, and they originally were fighting Nazis, but then they
Yeah.
were in the New 52. I think they were brought to the modern day, and they're
Oh,
just sort of
okay.
like these classical, what you would like imagine as like the classic monsters. They're in this group, and they're
Yeah.
just like a crime fighting group.
Interesting. Yeah, so they did show a picture which I'm gonna throw up on the screen, but
Hmm.
if you're listening to the audio, obviously, there's looks like Weasel is gonna be part of this animated group.
Yeah, yeah.
And I do see there's a character called G.I. Robot. I think that's what his name is.
Hmm.
And I'm wondering if that's Sergeant Rock on the far left
No,
or
that
Rick
is
Flag.
Rick Flag
Is it?
Senior.
It's
Yeah.
Rick Flag Senior. Okay, so yeah, that makes sense, especially with the yellow shirt and everything.
Hmm.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, I'll definitely watch it because it's DC, and I know James Gunn is writing it, so it should be
Yeah.
interesting. But it doesn't like pique my interest too much.
Hmm.
Next thing we have is Waller,
Well.
which is interesting because it's still Viola Davis playing her.
Hmm.
So it's kind of confusing if this still takes place in like the Suicide Squad DCEU continuity, or if this is part of the rebooted thing, because I guess they're not going to recast everybody, but he did say that she's going to team up with Peacemaker characters.
Right.
So that's a little confusing. I said in our reaction video that's up on our YouTube channel, I did say that I think that the Waller series was already like in development. I think they
Hmm.
announced it soon after Peacemaker season 1 came out.
Hmm.
So I guess it's probably just a leftover, like they were already developing it, so they're just kind of going to release it kind of like the movies that are coming out this year. But I could
Yeah.
be wrong, maybe it is part of the new universe, but I think it would be kind of odd to have Waller and the Peacemaker characters in like the first chapter of the DC universe,
Hmm.
At least having like such a focused role.
Yeah, I mean, the way that it's grouped with these other things, it kind of implies that it's part of the
Yeah.
main continuity, but I don't know. It could be, yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, he did say that the official start of the DCU, the official first thing is going to be Superman.
Yeah.
So, speaking of Superman, I'm pretty sure the next project is Superman Legacy, which
Hmm.
I wasn't really expecting that title. I was expecting them to
Yeah.
go maybe something off of, like, from the actual comics, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, but I wonder, like, what that means, the whole
Yeah.
legacy thing, especially considering this is supposed to be Superman just starting out.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about that we really don't have much information on it besides it's supposed to come out in, I think, July 2025.
Yeah.
And we know James Gunn is currently writing it, and we're probably not going to see casting for another few months.
Hmm.
Because he said he doesn't want to cast until they're already done the script.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So and like they still have time, it's supposed to come out
Yeah.
in like 2.5 years. So
Hmm.
But yeah, that will be interesting. I feel like there's a lot of like this movie has like a really steep hill to climb
Hmm. Yeah.
because there's a lot of like bad blood with fans over Henry Cavill not being in it. Especially after there was that seemed like an official announcement that they're going to be continuing with Henry
Hmm.
Cavill and he's going to get a sequel.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I'm like, I'm not exactly happy about it. I would definitely prefer to see Henry Cavill do more, but
Hmm.
at the same time, kind of accepted reality. I'm not just gonna, boycott
Right.
this movie because, like, oh well, the actor I want to be in it isn't in it.
Yeah, and I feel like if this universe does well, they could definitely bring them back in a similar way to
Mm-hmm.
like how Michael Keaton's coming back or something like that, where they could
Yeah.
bring back these older actors in the
Right.
future at some point. It's not off the table.
Right, and even James Gunn was saying that anything not in the main DCU is going to be under the Elseworlds label.
Right.
So like the Batman and Joker and whatnot, but I feel like there's also could be an opportunity down the line to have other Elseworlds
Hmm.
projects, you
Yeah.
know, like another Superman project with Henry Cavill at some point, like
Hmm. Hmm.
it seems like he and James like it doesn't seem like they parted on bad terms or anything,
Right. Right.
and James even said in a tweet that he's looking forward to maybe working with him down the line.
Hmm.
So yeah, I guess I'll see. Like the reason I'm not super excited about this movie is I feel like, with all the main heroes, I feel like there's been so many versions. I'm just not super excited about seeing new versions of them so soon.
Hmm.
But at the same time, if the trailer looks amazing and the casting's great, all that stuff, then I'm definitely gonna see it no matter what.
Right. Right.
I just hope it's really good and it's kind of worth all this drama and restarting everything.
Hmm. Right.
But
Right.
yeah. So I think the next big project on the dock, unless there was anything else you wanted to say about this.
No, the Superman is probably the one I have the least to say about, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. Next is Lanterns, which I'm
Mm.
kind of surprised it's called Lanterns and not like Green Lantern Corps.
Yeah,
Um,
the thing that I thought about is that the last Green Lantern live action project was literally called The Green Lantern, but this is it drops the green and it's plural, meaning
mhm,
that there's gonna be more than one, and
mhm.
there's probably gonna be more of a focus on the other lanterns. Like we're gonna
Yeah.
see yellow lanterns, we're gonna see red lanterns, we're gonna see
Mm,
purple, I think was another one. I don't know. But we're gonna see all the different colors.
yeah.
That's what I'm kind of getting from this. It's not just about the Green Lanterns,
I didn't
which is
think
really
about that.
fascinating to me.
I didn't think about that, but yeah, that's actually a good point. That would be really cool. And he did say something about there being like some terrifying secret they uncover that,
Yeah.
leads into the rest of the DCU. I think it would be cool to introduce at least one other Lantern Corps, if not multiple.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I'm really excited for this because personally, I've been thinking for a long time that like I think the perfect like next live action Green Lantern project would be, a team up with Hal Jordan and John Stewart. So I'm really glad that they're focusing on both of them and not just one or the other.
Right.
And I'm glad it's them and not like another character. I feel like you need to establish those two because they're kind of the
Hmm.
main human Green Lanterns.
Yeah.
I really want to see the other ones at some point, maybe even in
Hmm.
this series, but I'm really looking forward to seeing these two
Yeah.
established, and I'm assuming they're going to show like everything else, like like where they come from and all that. I'm assuming it's not just going to be those two, because he even said there are going to be
Right.
other Green Lanterns in it.
Hmm.
I know some people are a little bit upset that he said it's going to be a terrestrial adventure, you know,
Yeah.
but I mean, there's been I think it's a fine starting point,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially considering they're just starting out. It's like what it's supposed to be the second like official project in the DCU,
Right.
in this rebooted everything. So I feel like I'm okay with that, and I
Hmm.
feel like it'd be hard to do kind of a space mystery, at least without establishing more of the
Right.
DC like cosmic side of things.
Hmm.
So I'm
Hmm.
totally okay with it as long as they don't brush over their origins or like anything like that, which I don't think they will.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense because it's their sector is Earth and everything, is that area. So
Hmm.
I'm okay with it as long as it's done well. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like they have a very good opportunity to really develop John Stewart's character. Because
Hmm.
when he first started out, he was a very interesting character. He was like a very angry character.
Hmm.
and Hal kind of had to rein him in a bit. So I feel like that could be an interesting dynamic, kind of having the
Yeah.
older Hal Jordan and a younger Jon Stewart kind of thing.
Hmm.
And I find the art that they have for this series kind of interesting. Like I'm assuming this is like, is this from a comic? Do you know?
I don't have it in front of me, but I
Okay.
can pull it up real quick. Um, yeah, it definitely looks like a comic cover.
Yeah,
I don't know which one though.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so the Hal Jordan on the left is from Green Lantern Earth 1.
Okay,
I'm not sure what the Jon Stewart one was, but yeah, I was kind of wondering like because those suits don't look like classic Green Lantern suits.
right.
So I was kind of wondering like if they're going to like try and more like make them look like humans, like human clothes with like a Green Lantern like logo on it, which I kind of hope they don't go
Hmm.
that route, or that might be interesting initially, but I really want to see the classic like Green Lantern suits,
Yeah,
and
yeah, for sure.
not like a weird muscly thing like they
Hmm.
had in the 2011 movie.
Right.
But I guess we'll see how that goes. But that's probably the one I'm most excited for. I've been itching to see Green Lanterns on the screen, in live action for a while.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I think the next one was the Authority, maybe.
Hmm.
I guess it doesn't really matter if we mix them up a little bit, but
Yeah, the article I have, they're not in it, and they're not in the order that they were announced. They're split up
okay.
like movies, and then there's the TV shows.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah. So there's the Authority, which is going to be a movie. And
Hmm.
I really don't know anything about the Authority, really. Like, I did a quick Google search, and I'm like, they're from, I forget what it's called, like, West Side or something?
Wildstorm. It's
Well,
a different.
completely wrong. Wildstorm.
Yeah, it was a different continuity, but DC was
Okay.
still publishing it. And in recent years, they've been trying to incorporate it kind of
Mm,
slowly into the main continuity, but it looks like they're going to go right out the gate with this in the mainstream DCU. And from what I've gathered, it seems like it's like the Watchmen mixed with like the Boys. So it's a
mm,
very violent, very brutal comic book. And there's sort
okay.
of the group is they sort of like it's kind of like Amanda Waller's philosophy where like end as long as the end goal is good, then it doesn't matter how we got there kind of thing.
Okay. So
So
they're not exactly classically heroic.
right, right.
Okay. That could definitely be an interesting concept. Given what you just
Mhm.
said, I feel like that would have to be like a more serious, maybe even an R-rated movie, which James
Right.
Gunn did say is going to be a mix of PG-13 and R-rated projects,
Yeah,
which I think is great because I feel like that's
right.
a major thing that DC or Marvel really lacks is
Yeah.
just like committing or like just being willing to branch out from just the family-friendly stuff.
Hmm.
Because there's so many different corners of both Marvel and DC's universe. Not all of it can
Right.
fit into this family-friendly, PG-13 bubble.
Exactly.
I think
Exactly.
the CW does that too. So I
Hmm.
think I'm glad that they're sticking to the tone of each character or each group.
Right.
That being said, I feel like this is the one project that I wish wasn't on this slate, mainly because
Okay.
I feel like it's too early.
Okay.
I feel like if they were going to introduce a kind of obscure team like this, like not even in the main DC continuity, I feel like
Hmm.
that should be happen maybe later down the line. I kind of prefer. I would have preferred if they stuck to some other DC characters that haven't really got their time to shine yet.
Okay.
That being said, I mean it could be a really interesting addition, and it could
Hmm.
be interesting. He said they were going to interact with the other DC heroes,
Yeah.
so that could definitely be interesting to see, especially like heroes that are like Superman, who are a lot more,
Hmm.
um, classically
Right.
heroic.
Yeah. And the other thing about this is that they're like and the kind of the whole slate as a whole, like there's not any like diehard Amanda Waller fans who are going to be super
Hmm.
upset if you change anything. So it's like there is a
Yeah, that's
lot
true.
less risk with some of these titles, and so with the Authority, it gives
That's a
them a
good
lot
point.
more room to kind of be creative with the subject material.
Which I feel like is where James Gunn thrives. in a lot of ways
Yeah.
because he takes characters that nobody really knows about, and he stays true to them to the comics to a certain extent, you know. But he also
Hmm.
does his own thing, and because nobody really
Right.
cares about the characters, it works.
Hmm.
Um, so the next project I want to talk about, unless you wanted to say anything else.
No,
All
that
right,
covers it.
The Brave and the Bold. So I did not expect him to talk about a Batman project because I feel like we've
Hmm.
already got the Batman, and you know there was, you know, I just feel like we have so many Batmans, and then there's going to be two Batmen in the Flash. So I was kind of
Yeah.
surprised, but at the same time, I think if they're going to do a Batman movie, I'm glad that it's going to be with Robin,
Yeah.
and that's going to introduce the Bat family.
Hmm.
I guess the thing that would is really going to make me excited about this is like the aesthetics and the casting.
Right.
I feel like if they don't get those right, I'm not really going to care about this.
Hmm.
But you know, so I wouldn't say I'm on the fence. I'm leaning towards being excited for this, but I'm kind of like there's already so many Batmen running around. You know, I feel like this one really has to establish that it's unique, which
Yeah.
having Robin in it kind of does that, but I feel like it needs to really build out the Bat family in the universe.
Yeah. Yeah. Because for the past like 20 years, most of the Batman movies has been very solo
Yes,
Batman.
yes,
So like that is just the
which is really
tip of the
annoying.
Batman iceberg. Like there's so much
Yeah.
other you could do with this character when you introduce sort of the
Oh
other
yeah.
elements of the world. And so I'm very excited that we get to go a little bit deeper with this. One thing that's interesting, which could potentially differentiate this
Hmm.
between other Batmans, is that it's specifically the Grant Morrison run, which, if you're
Right.
familiar with that, that was actually Dick Grayson as Batman.
Oh really? I
Yes.
did not know that.
So if they want to make this super different than
Mm.
all the other ones, they could just be like, this is not Bruce, this is Dick. And so that could be potentially like we introduce Dick and then Bruce shows up later and then he could, go off and do his Nightwing thing. But
Yeah.
if you want to start out with this being distinctly different, like that could be a good way to go.
I feel like that could go really well or not so great because I feel like, you know, like the
Yeah.
first Batman entry might be kind of weird
Hmm.
and confusing for people if it's Dick.
Right.
I feel like they would have to really lay the groundwork well somehow, either
Yeah.
with like previous stuff or in the actual movie. You know, not
Hmm.
have him be Batman at first. Like maybe open the movie with like kind of like what Gotham Knights did, have Bruce like die or
Right.
something or be out of
Hmm.
commission, and you know he's been Robin, and like Damian's been on like the sidelines, and Damian like is the new Robin, and Dick has
Yeah.
to step in. You know, I feel like there could be a really cool way of doing it, and like you said, really differentiate it from the other Batman projects, and then
Hmm.
like at the end of the movie, Bruce comes back or something where they like set that up in some way.
Yeah.
But that could be really cool, especially
Hmm.
seeing Dick kind of adjust into the Batman role
Right.
while also being a mentor to Damian, who's super annoying. You know,
Hmm.
I feel like that
Yeah.
that could actually be really cool. But I guess we'll see how that goes. And I feel like it'd be a really cool introduction to Dick too,
Yes. Yeah.
and kind of have him be like you said, be Nightwing later on.
Hmm.
That makes me a little more interested in it, honestly. If it's not Bruce and Dick instead, because we like I kind of never thought that it would be even be an option to have Dick be Batman,
Hmm.
you know, in live action, because it's taken so long to even just get a Nightwing on the big screen, you know.
Right. Right.
Hmm. All right, well that kind of intrigues me a little more.
Yeah.
I also hope that all the other like the Bat family exists. You know,
Hmm.
like I hope they're not skipping over some to get to Damien. I hope that like Barbara
Yeah.
and Jason and Tim all exist and are kind
Hmm.
of doing their own thing at this point, or maybe Jason is like presumed dead, and then later
Yeah.
on they can do a Red Hood thing.
That's what I was thinking. Like, if you're going to introduce the whole
Hmm.
family in this one movie, you'd probably just have Jason already be dead, and then you
Hmm.
could do the Red Hood later on. Because
Yeah,
having like four Robins right out the gate might be a little too much.
yeah, but I think it is a smart idea, no matter what they do, that they're not just doing a Batman origin thing
Yeah.
or
Right.
like a young Batman because the Batman is already doing that.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I feel like there is a really good middle ground between the Batman and like Ben Affleck's Batman, you know, where
Hmm.
there's kind of like a peak, um, like Batman at his peak between that, you know, kind of like the Arkham games, where
Right.
he's not quite old and jaded yet, but he's not young and inexperienced. He's like,
Hmm.
you know, so I feel like if they follow that track, it could be really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's move on to, I guess, let's talk about Paradise Lost, this new series.
Yeah, and in the initial reaction, I said that I brought
Mhm.
up the I forget John Milton, I think was the author, the original, the classic literature Paradise Lost, which is
Oh yeah.
the Garden of Eden. That has nothing to do with it. I was mistaken.
Okay.
It's intentional. There was a Wonder Woman Paradise Lost,
Hmm.
where it's sort of a Wonder Woman prequel. Like
Hmm.
Diana's not Wonder Woman yet. It's a civil war between the
Mm.
Themysciran, like they're kind of like split. And so there's like an Egyptian people where like
Oh, okay.
Artemis comes from, and then there's the
Oh, that makes
Themyscira,
sense.
which is where Diana comes from. And so there's like a civil war between the two of them over who's going to be the next queen of like the whole. I guess I don't know what the whole race is called. I don't know. Maybe they're the Amazons. I don't know what they're called,
Yeah,
but
I think just the Amazons, yeah.
yeah. And so there's kind of a civil war over who's going to be like the next queen of over all of them. And so
Okay.
this is before she's Wonder Woman. And so they're kind of like going to explore that world, which I
Interesting.
brought up this earlier. I think I would really like to see some of the supporting characters. Artemis is a really interesting character that I like. I don't
Hmm.
think Donna Troy is going to be there because she was adopted. She's not
Yeah,
Themysciran by blood, but there's a lot of other interesting characters they could bring up.
definitely, yeah. Yeah, like I feel like they did a really good job in like the Wonder Woman movies, like just kind of
Mhm.
having them in it and like representing them, but we didn't really get to
Right.
explore them too much. So
Yeah.
I feel like this could be interesting. Was Wonder Woman in Paradise Lost? You said it was like a prequel, so I'm guessing not, or
Diana
was
was
she?
there, but
She was.
she was not as Wonder Woman.
Okay, so it was
So
before she's.
she doesn't have the title Wonder Woman, but she as a character she's
Mhm.
there.
So do you think she's going to be introduced in this series, or if they're just going to focus on the Amazons and she's not there yet?
I think she could probably be there, like a
Mhm.
young Diana could
Yeah.
probably be there.
I think that would be really smart to like introduce
Mhm.
her before she's Wonder Woman because we've never really seen that before.
Yeah.
Introduce her, at least not, in the course of one movie we have, but like kind of introduce her and then have her become Wonder Woman over the course of like two projects. I
Yeah.
think that would be kind of cool. So like she's not necessarily the main character, but she's introduced.
Hmm.
And he did say they're going to introduce it kind of like Westeros, like it's kind of an exploration of the world instead of
Yeah.
focusing on one character, which it could be cool if it's done in a really cool way and if it's kind of a more
Hmm.
serious like um, period piece type thing or like, like a
Yeah.
ancient Greek theme, which I
Hmm.
feel like they really, really, really missed the mark with Wonder Woman, making it like a Greek epic. It could have been really cool if they did
Yeah.
something like that and have her battle like, more than Ares, like some ancient
Hmm.
Greek monsters or something like that. But then
Hmm.
with Wonder Woman 1984, they went out a totally different route. So I feel like if
Right.
they did that with this and make her roots very, ancient Greek, it could be super cool.
Yeah.
Especially considering this new Percy Jackson series is coming out soon. And I feel like
Hmm.
there might be like a resurgence of like the whole like Greek mythology thing with like young kids and young people and whatnot and in
Yeah.
pop culture. So they might be able to kind
Hmm.
of like exploit that.
Yeah, another thing that is they haven't casted Diana yet, but
Mhm.
Gal Gadot is a producer on this show.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
I don't we don't I probably she's not gonna probably not gonna be in
Probably
it, but
not.
she is a producer on the show.
Interesting. Huh. Well, that's kind of interesting then. Yeah, like
Hmm.
James did say like he's planning on working with a lot of these actors, going forward, even if they're not playing their respective roles anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, and also this is supposed to be an HBO show. Like it's it's
Hmm.
it's not just it's not kind of like Titans, where it's just HBO Max. It seems like it's going to be like, an actual HBO show.
Mm. Okay.
So I
Yeah.
feel like that's gonna have more budget and it's probably gonna be more serious and
Hmm.
just higher production and everything. So that could actually be a pretty cool show, honestly, the more I think
Yeah.
about it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Huh. All right. Well, that's Paradise Lost. I guess let's talk about Booster Gold,
Booster Gold.
which I'm really excited for this. It's supposed to be another series.
Hmm.
I'm really excited because I really like Booster Gold's character. I've liked him for a while, and I feel like he doesn't really get much spotlight. Like there's maybe one or two episodes focused on him in like Justice League Unlimited, the animated series. And that's kind of
Hmm.
the extent of his character, but I feel like he's really interesting. He's not like your typical like, I don't know, heavy hitter type character cuz
Yeah.
he's more like I'm trying to think of an equivalent. That's the thing too. There's not really much of an equivalent for his character. I find those characters interesting when they
Hmm.
you can't draw like a clear like line between like a Marvel character and a DC character or something, you know, like Aquaman and Namor are so
Right.
obviously like, you know, each other.
Hmm.
He's sort of a
From
mix of like, you know, Iron Man and Green Lantern and like I don't know, some character from the future. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with him, but from what I've gathered,
Mhm.
he's sort of like an arrogant, like dumbass kind of
Yeah.
character, which kind of reminds me of, at least like a personality wise, he kind of
Hmm.
reminds me of like Ash from the Evil Dead. Is if that's
Mm.
I'm not super familiar with
Yeah.
his character, but is that
Yeah.
kind of like the thing?
Yeah, he very similar attitude, I would say.
Okay.
Especially like at first, he's very much just like totally pretending to be a hero when he's not. As his
Hmm.
character goes on, he definitely becomes more heroic, but he's still just kind of yeah, kind of a cocky but likable
Hmm.
character.
Okay.
But like he starts out as being just a normal like average, almost honestly more of like a more pathetic Peter Parker type character, you know. But
Hmm.
he's from the future, so
Yeah.
he basically just like steals normal technology from his day, at least
Hmm.
relatively normal. Like not everybody has it, but it's not like an insane
Yeah.
advancement type thing. And he goes back in time, and that's another
Hmm.
cool thing with his character too. Is it's very time travel centered, so they could do
Yeah.
interesting things with that too, and maybe even kind of branch off into like the Flash or those kind of characters.
Hmm.
But he's got like a lot of
Yeah.
interesting powers coming from his suit. Like he's got a power ring thing that like gives him a few powers like flight and a force field and stuff. And he
Hmm.
has like this little robot that flies around called Skeets. It's just like kind of like his
Okay.
little companion. And it, like
Hmm.
whenever he doesn't know anything, which is a lot, he just kind of goes like, "Skeet, what's that?" And it's just like, "Wow, it's this," you know. So
Hmm.
that could be a fun dynamic too.
Yeah.
Plus, you know, like a time machine and all that stuff. So yeah, it could be a really cool
Mhm.
character. And I feel like yeah, like when he first comes back, like I feel like it could be interesting to make him like a celebrity
Mm.
superhero,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
like where people are like enamored with him, but like he's the only one that knows deep down that he's like, you know, not really a hero.
Right.
So
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like that show has a lot of potential.
Hmm.
Yeah, last couple projects we have Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, which I was not expecting them to announce a Supergirl project so soon.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm down for it. Like we haven't really seen Supergirl much at all, like besides the CW and
Yeah.
in the Flash. But that's kind of an alternate universe version of Supergirl.
Hmm. And the thing about that, I kind of talked about this before at some point on, I don't remember where, but like I
Hmm.
brought it up, but where like in the comics, Supergirl is quite a different character than Superman. But
Yes.
as far as like in the animation and live action that we've seen so
Hmm.
far, she's basically just a clone of
Hmm.
Superman. Um,
Yeah.
but what James Gunn brought up is that
Hmm.
she's going to be more like jaded,
Hmm.
which I think is very
Yes,
interesting.
could be a very
Um,
cool route to go with her.
yeah, exactly. She's oftentimes she's younger, more emotional.
Hmm.
She has a similar power level, but she's not as much experience.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that is a lot more is a very interesting dynamic that hasn't really been explored yet, in my opinion. So
Yeah, I think they did a decent job in like Justice League Unlimited, making her
mhm.
different. Like
Yeah.
they definitely put an emphasis that she's like a lot more hot headed and
Hmm.
like doesn't hold back as much as Clark does.
Right.
And like James Gunn said, you know, it's supposed to be a jaded Supergirl,
Yeah.
and like her origin is different in this book than in the original comics, where she just kind of like gets launched into space and then hangs out in like the Phantom Zone or whatever in like
Yeah.
suspended animation for
Hmm.
however long. So that she's technically was born before Kal-El, but
Right.
ends up being younger than him.
Hmm.
Also, yeah, well, yeah, and then in this book, it seems like she was like ended up landing on like a piece of Krypton, or it was just never launched at all, you know, into space. And I haven't read it yet. Have you?
No, I haven't, but I
Okay.
think like it's like a portion of Krypton survived or something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
like they're able to live on it, but like it's not super great, is what kind of
Gotcha.
my impression of it.
Okay. Yeah, so that's definitely an interesting origin for her, and to have a more
Hmm.
jaded super character, where like
Yeah.
that symbol is very much of like kind of a symbol of um classical heroics, and you know
Right.
to kind of have a more jaded character with that in that same super family could be interesting.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that could definitely be a pretty cool movie. Or
Hmm.
I forget, is it supposed to be a movie? I think so.
Yeah, it is supposed to be a
Okay.
movie. Yeah.
Okay. And then we have Swamp Thing, which I am
Hmm.
looking forward to this too, because James Gunn did say it was gonna be like
Right.
a horror story, which I think is really good for Swamp Thing. I don't
Yeah.
see how you can really do Swamp Thing without making it a horror movie.
Hmm.
I honestly did enjoy the Swamp Thing series, which
Hmm.
was on like DC Universe, I think, when that was still
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
I thought it was actually pretty good. Like it was surprisingly good, like production wise.
Okay. I still
And
haven't seen it, but
it was very violent. Um,
hmm.
there were some horror elements, but I think making this movie like very much part of the magical side
Yeah.
of DC would be a really good idea to kind of springboard into other characters like Doctor Fate, Constantine, Zatanna,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
And speaking of this movie, apparently just I think today when we're recording this, or
Hmm.
apparently James Mangold is in talks to direct this movie,
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
which could be very cool. He's a really good director. Like he did a great job with
Hmm.
Logan, and
Yeah.
I've enjoyed pretty much every other movie he's made as well.
Yeah.
And he can definitely direct an R-rated comic book movie. We've seen that, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So I definitely hope this movie is an R rating. It gets an R rating. I feel like
Yeah.
if you're gonna do horror, make it horror, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
And honestly, it could be the first real horror comic book movie that I can think of off the top of my head. Like there's some that have like dabbled in it, but
Yeah.
nobody's really committed to the horror element, you know? Like even
Hmm.
Doctor Strange, like some people have called it a horror movie. It was like, and the second one, there were
Yeah.
elements,
Yeah.
but it was not a straight up horror movie, you know? They're
Hmm.
really I can't think of one that has been just maybe the original Constantine with Keanu Reeves.
Yeah. I was thinking the Blade movies maybe, but I
Kind
don't
of,
know.
but they're like too like stylized to be fully horror,
Sure.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to Swamp Thing. I like the
Hmm.
character, and
Yeah.
I think James Mangold could do a really cool job.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, before we wrap things up, I wanted to talk about some extra news that was released to the press
Okay.
before that whole video dropped.
Yeah.
So I'm getting this information from a few different sources. I'm getting it from discussing film on Twitter, as well as
Hmm.
Variety, Deadline, Heroic Hollywood, all that stuff. So the first thing it was Peter Safran was talked about Batgirl, and he was
Hmm.
saying I've heard this before, but he said that it was not releasable.
Okay.
And that it would have hurt DC, but in another quote he also said that it would have hurt the people that worked on it. So to
Okay.
me, that seems like I feel like they probably just gave them like Warner Brothers greenlit this movie with a really low budget for what it was.
Hmm.
I feel like because they greenlit a lot of stuff just to kind of have it out there, even though they all knew they were losing their jobs,
Right.
but they didn't give them very much thought and didn't really give them much of
Hmm.
a budget.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm kind of thinking it just had too much of a low budget. And I've heard some people who had seen it say that it felt more like a TV show than a movie.
Okay.
So I'm thinking they just gave them way too low of a budget, and the final product just didn't feel like a good movie. I guess
Hmm.
I don't know
Okay.
because it's multiple people who've said this is not even like Peter Safran doesn't really have much reason to say this, and because it's not like he was one of the ones that canceled it. It wasn't his decision. He's not like
Hmm.
backing up his own decision,
Right.
but I don't know. Like I still would have liked to see it,
Yeah.
but it does seem more and more that it was like kind of sabotaged before it even came out,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is unfortunate for like everybody who was involved with it because there's a lot of great talent in there.
Yeah.
Also heard, I don't know if this is confirmed or not, but reportedly Drew Goddard, Jeremy Slater, Christina Hodson, Crystal Henry, and Tom King are among the writers who are building James Gunn's DCU.
Okay.
So I know Drew Goddard. He's done a lot of stuff. He was actually the showrunner of the Daredevil series on
Okay.
Netflix. So
Is he the same one who directed Cabin in the Woods?
yes, yep,
Okay.
yep, same guy. And then I'm not familiar with the others except for Tom King. He's
Tom King
obviously
is a
the
comic
comic writer.
writer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that could be interesting. I mean, it seems like they're focusing really like a lot of attention on just getting good writers and good
Hmm.
directors for these projects instead of
Yeah.
just like let's just greenlight a bunch of stuff and hope we find good talent, or like let's just
Hmm.
find talent and then like find a project for them, you know.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
seems like they're really taking their time and really wanting these to be quality products, which I think is
Right.
something that the old regime did not do at all.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they're finally doing that. So that gives me a lot more faith in James Gunn and this, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'll be honest, like I really haven't been excited for the future of DC since maybe like since Snyder stuff was first starting.
Hmm.
But since then it's just been such like a mishmash and shit show that
Yeah.
it's been really hard to be actually excited. It's been more just like cautiously hopeful. Now I feel
Hmm.
like I can be a little more actually hopeful. You know,
Yeah.
even though it's still
Yeah.
not clear whether these projects will be good, there's at least like a plan going forward, you know, and they're like
Hmm.
focusing on quality,
Right.
seems like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Apparently, Peter Safran also said that Ezra Miller is committed to recovery and
Okay.
for furthering their mental health. And
Right.
he said
Right.
when they feel like they're ready to have the discussion, well, I'll figure out what the best path forward is. So it seems
Hmm.
like there might be an opportunity for him to come back as Flash.
Yeah.
Um, Kind of springboarding off of that, apparently Gal Gadot, Jason Momoa, and Ezra Miller and Zachary Levi have the door open to reprise their roles in the DCU. That's like what some reports are saying. From what I could find, the actual quote was referring to like those actors. There's James said there's no reason why all the people you mentioned couldn't be part of the DCU. We just haven't
Yeah.
decided what the story is that we want to tell that incorporates Aquaman or Shazam.
Hmm.
So it's not really clear whether he means like they could come back. I feel like that wouldn't make sense given they're rebooting everything. And if you're gonna get
Right.
rid of Henry Cavill, like why would you keep like Ezra, Gal, and Jason? That would just be
Hmm.
like more confusing than just rebooting everything.
Right.
Plus, like,
But we
yeah,
we
go ahead.
already know they're going to keep Amanda Waller, so
That's
that
true.
kind of raises the question like who else is going to stay. But
I
I
mean,
think they should replace most of the main like the front runners, I feel
right.
like.
It is possible that the Amanda Waller series, like, he didn't really say either way, like, what continuity it's going to be in. It could be
Hmm.
possible it's going to be, like, in this remnant, like, of the DCEU, and then going forward, like, it's just kind of a one off thing. And they don't necessarily
Okay.
continue with her. It's like I feel like that's really vague. Like they haven't really like he
Hmm.
hasn't really said so. But that's true. What you said, like so I don't know. I feel like this could be really confusing if they keep those actors though. And I feel like on
Yeah.
a personal note, like if they get rid of Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck, but they like keep the other characters and like or the other actors, and like why? You know,
Hmm.
it would feel weird to me having a new Batman, a new Superman interacting with those characters when they've already like, you know,
Right.
it's be like, well, that's the wrong Superman and Batman for this, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, James Gunn also addressed the supposed firing of Henry Cavill. And
Hmm.
what he said was that they didn't fire Henry Cavill. Henry was never cast. For me, it's about who
Right.
do I want to cast as Superman and who do the filmmakers we have want to cast. And for me, for this story, it isn't Henry.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like, I don't know, for me, I think the obvious reason would be age. You know, they want to go for it with a younger
Right.
Superman. Also, I think just the fact that Warner Brothers just couldn't like decide what they wanted to do with Superman, like it's
Hmm.
just kind of all over the place, and like they like kind of tried to change him into this like shallow, like smiley version of Superman, like
Right.
after like with the theatrical Justice League and
Hmm.
everything. So I feel like that's probably a big reason for it too. His version is
Yeah.
just so weird. It's like where do you go with his version? Do you go with the more like, you know, because it's again like Zack Snyder had a plan for his arc, and
Hmm.
without him doing it, it's like what do you do? Do you follow that arc? Do you do something completely new? Do you kind
Right.
of go this? It's just like it does just kind of like bring up a lot of issues and a lot of problems.
Hmm.
He did say, yeah, he did also say, for me, for this story, it isn't Henry. I like Henry. He's a great guy. I think he's gotten dicked around by a lot of people, including former regimes of this company. But this Superman isn't Henry for a number of reasons. So, yeah,
Hmm.
which I mean, it makes sense. I've kind of, I've just accepted it. I'm not gonna be like, like fire James Gunn because, like I
Yeah.
feel like it makes sense. I just hope what he's doing with Superman is good.
Hmm.
And I am glad he said that though, that he acknowledged that the previous regime just like kept jerking him around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, But yeah, that was pretty much all the news I wanted to talk about, at least that I can remember. I'll
Yeah.
probably remember something else while I'm trying to sleep tonight. But oh well, it happens.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about this DCU
No,
stuff?
just I wanted to bring up that there was an emphasis on keeping the actors through the video games, animation, TV
Oh
shows.
yeah,
I thought that was kind of
and
interesting.
and he brought up comics again. Yeah. How do you think he's gonna like incorporate comics? Like, how is that? Do you think? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, there's always been kind of like every time there's a new superhero movie, there's always been kind of like a tie-in comic.
Hmm.
So, like at the very least, he's talking about that, but there might
Hmm.
be like whole like comic series that connect
Yeah.
to the movies because there was a comic book series recently that tied into like the Arrowverse.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and
And
so
they've
I
done
don't know.
some with the Batman 1989 universe.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And another thing is that like you'd have to get actors that are good at both because
Yeah.
with What If there was not there's some shaky performances in the voice acting department. So you'd have to
Mm,
get actors that are good with both. Like I've seen that
yeah.
I think they did that with The Mandalorian. There were some
Mm,
actors who went back and forth and I didn't watch the show, but
yeah.
apparently there wasn't an issue there. So
No, yeah, I think yeah, like Ming-Na Wen, she was Fennec Shand in Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian, but she reprised a role in The Bad Batch and I
yeah.
think in the Clone Wars too, and like it worked well. So, that's pretty much it. Thank you everyone for listening.
Mhm.
If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, please hit like and subscribe and check out the podcast
Yeah.
on any platforms you listen to podcasts on. Be sure to check us out on our social media. It's just casual experts, or I think for Instagram it's like casual_exports, just stuff like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Peace out.